Hello Necron players and welcome back to the channel. What a fantastic week if you're a Necron player. So this week, as you know, Warhammer community have let us all know the new faction balancing to even out the game, which is very helpful for our underperforming factions in match play in particular. So Necron's got a whole bunch of units with a core keyword now added to their list of keywords. So if you weren't aware of this already, I'll display on the screen what Warhammer community have actually announced. So you're going to be adding the core keyword to the following datasheet. So the Canoptic Acanthrites, the Canoptic Reanimator, the Canoptic Wraiths, Flayed ones, Locust Destroyers, Locust Heavy Destroyers, Ophidian Destroyers, Scorpic Destroyers and Tryout Praetorians. All of those have now got the core keyword, which has drastically changed how we're going to operate within this codex. So this is going to have opened the door to tons of combinations within the codex. In fact, I'd argue we're a top tier faction once again. We'll have to see how our Necrons fare in the upcoming tournaments. So this video is going to go into a deep dive of all the options that have been opened for us due to these changes with a core keyword for certain units. So I'm going to be making my way through the codex and discussing pretty much anything that I think is going to be relevant within this new type of synergy that's going to make our list stronger. Now I'm going to try and keep this video ordered, but there's just so many synergies from everywhere, so I'd imagine I'm probably going to go astray. So let's begin talking about some of the units and models that have taken a huge buff with the balanced data slate. Now all of the Overlord type of models as well as the Command Barge have massively been buffed with their support abilities such as the My Will Be Done ability and the Relentless March abilities, both now working on those listed core units, getting a +1 to hit, which is a pretty solid bonus for all those core units, especially destroyer units that can already reroll 1s naturally with their Hardwire for Destruction ability. So now they're going to be hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s. So this is now going to allow us to have our Overlord stay back with Locust Heavy Destroyers, or maybe a Catacomb Command Barge can be flanked with a unit of Canoptic Wraiths for example. So these buffs are working on both our shooter units as well as the melee units. So speaking of Overlord models, there's a character in particular that previously went under the radar but now has risen back to the top of the queue, and that character is Anrak the Traveller. He's got all the standard Overlord buffs, the My Will Be Done buff, the Relentless March buff for that +1 to the movement with core units, but he's also got that Lord of the Fire on Legions ability, which is an aura, to grant an additional attack for core units within 6 inches. So this can start to get really tasty when you put your combos together. So bear that one in mind throughout the video when we're talking about the melee units later on, but for now one of those synergies you can simply pop him out of a Night Scythe with a unit of Scorpic Destroyers, and I did say a unit of Scorpic Destroyers coming out of a Night Scythe, and that's going to give them a buttload of attacks. Now another monster of a character that's risen back to the top is Illuminazares. Probably one of the biggest turnarounds you'll ever see, and this guy was never fielded and now he's absolutely incredible. He's got his double rights of reanimation ability, which used to just bring back D3 warriors, which was okay I guess, but this works on core units. There's that word again. So think about what this actually means. You can now bring back a heavy Locust Destroyer which is 60 points, and you can be doing that every single turn, twice. Heck, you can even do it 3 times with the Deathless Arise stratagem if you really wanted to. Then he's got his augmentation ability, and you guessed it, it works on core units. So what used to previously happen is you run out of core units by turn 2, then the ability became a bit pointless. Now with almost everything having core now, you're buffing units left, right and centre throughout the entirety of the game. But his rights of reanimation ability alone is ridiculous, and that'll easily pay for his own points cost. Now a Royal Warden is on the list of buff support characters because he's using his adaptive strategy ability on virtually everything, pulling them out of combat, then they can shoot and charge in the same turn, which means that you're going to be fighting first, which is even better than those fight first, fight last kind of deals, whereas this guy was previously only good to get those warriors out of danger. Scorpic Lords have also benefited from this change in the data sheets for the core units. Nothing really new here in terms of his actual abilities and how they work, because they work with Destroyer cult units. However, you stick a Veil of Darkness relic on him, which does work with core units, and then you zip him off with a unit of 6 destroyers. Don't forget to give him the implacable warlord trait as it grants rerolls to the charge rolls for core units within 3 inches. Which kind of makes me think, do we even need a Chronomancer anymore? Because that was his gig. Probably better on a Scorpic Lord now, because your Scorpic Destroyers are going to be rerolling 1s to wound with his United in Destruction aura. Then moving on to the Necron Lord. Of course the Lord's will abilities will work on a lot more units now, but realistically at this moment in time, they're the back of the queue again. Reanimating warriors with a cheap orb carrier isn't the new Necron way. Technomancers, quite like Illuminazares, they're worth every penny now. Similarly, they've got the rights of reanimation ability, just on a cheaper scale. Then when you add the Canoptic Cloak combined with the rights of reanimation, you're going to bring back a pricing model and repair another one every single turn, which is pretty good. And also bear in mind that you're actually stealing movement when you reanimate models back. We used to standardly do it with the warriors. Whenever we brought a warrior back, we used to reanimate that model back to the front of the unit to steal some extra ground, whether it's going closer to an objective or get into some sort of aura buff from an overlord. This is now applicable to these multi-wound models that we aren't really used to reanimating, because reanimation doesn't really work that well on multi-wound models, but it's going to be getting them closer to their desired target, whether it be an objective or just an enemy unit. Now before moving on to other units, I thought we'd discuss some options for these characters to select from. So from the warlord traits, you've got the Flood of the Silent King, which is a lot more helpful because there's a lot more core units within the battle. So being able to add 3 inches to the aura abilities and the My Will Be Done ability, the Law's Will and the adaptive strategy abilities is going to be quite nice for those core units. But the main one out of the warlord traits is the Implacable Conqueror warlord trait, and as mentioned earlier, you're going to be giving core units the ability to reroll their charge roll, which I think is going to be huge. We always needed a Chronomancer, but that was just a bit of a tax for a unit really. But now we can utilise this much better, accompanied by a melee core unit. Now relic wise, you've got to look towards the Veil of Darkness really. You're going to be zipping a core unit and a character unit across the table. Now we pretty much only ever use this on a 20-man warrior blob with the Ghost Reapers, or perhaps Lich Guard as well. They used to go with the Veil of Darkness relic, but now you've got options again. You've got your Scorpic Destroyers, your Praetorians perhaps. Units that usually go on foot without an in-run save can now just simply hide behind obscuring terrain for deployment, then use your Veil of Darkness to get across the board and get straight into a fight. Now again, pairing this with the Implacable Conqueror, or a dynasty that's going to add to your charge move, such as the Novak dynasty or Butchers from the ancient dynasties, you're going to get them in much quicker than you would on foot. Now fortunately or unfortunately, depends how you look at it, a lot of our Cryptic Arcana is now worthless, like the Phylacterine Hive, as those units all have core now, although one did catch my eye, which is the Hypermaterial Ablator, which gives core units light cover if they're shot from more than 12 inches away. Now I'd probably still not pay for this one, but it has become a newer option for some of these units. I'm thinking again units such as the Scorpic Destroyers, using this to get a 2+ armor save at range, then using the Whirling Onslaught stratagem for -1 to wound as well. That's going to keep them going for much longer. And another one worth a mention is the Failsafe Overcharger, which you're going to be using with the Technomancer, and simply because you're going to be using potentially more Canoptic Wraiths within the battle, especially combined with that My Will Be Done ability from your overlords. So this will give them an additional attack on top of all that as a combination. So let's get back to the units themselves. I know we would go astray as predicted. The Reanimator now got the core keyword. Feels a little bit odd to me this one, it's still junk for me, but now we can use that Veil of Darkness relic to get him into a better location. Probably not the best way to make use of a one use only relic, but for giggles you can use it and maybe get your core guys in via a Night Scythe to meet the Reanimator there, which is going to obviously help with that reanimation protocols. In fact, if you do take a Night Scythe, then in theory you can use the Prismatic Dimensional Breach with your Chronoptic Reanimator, simply because you've got the core keyword now. Put him in reinforcements from the beginning, pop him out within 3 inches of the Night Scythe to get it to a better location. Speaking of the Night Scythe, let's discuss the flyer. So it can transport 20 core infantry units. Well, that's just put a Night Scythe on my Christmas list. Because all these units now have core, you can be sticking them all in a flyer, up to 20 of them. And I'm also thinking of units that can't take the Veil of Darkness relic, like Amrak the Traveller for example. He could go in there, pop out of the Night Scythe with all sorts of other melee units, and he can get into his fight. Now don't forget the stratagem, Prismatic Dimensional Breach for a command point, and you're selecting a core unit that's in strategic reserves, then you select a Night Scythe or a Monolith if you had a Monolith on the board, and you set the core unit up anywhere on the battlefield that is wholly within 3 inches of that Night Scythe or Monolith. So this only applies to a single unit, but they aren't even within transport capacity. So this is an additional unit, and there's also no 9-inch restriction within stratagem as well. So you'll almost guarantee you're going to make the charge by using it. Now speaking of the Monolith, that's got its Eternity Gate built in with its data sheet, but that's only usable if it remains stationary, but it could save you command points if you use that. Moving on, we've got Flayed ones. Where do you start with Flayed ones? They should have been core from day one in my opinion. Take 20 of them, use the Veil of Darkness and get the I Will Be Done ability on them so that they're hitting on 2s. That would be 60 attacks there, at -1 AP with exploding 6s to hit. It could be -2 AP with certain dynasties too. How to combo these guys up, this is what you do. So you use the Warlord trait to get that reroll to the charge roll, Implacable Conqueror, and then you break into all the stratagems. There's 2 stratagems here that you would be using, possibly 3 depending if you're playing the Novak code. If you are playing the Novak code, you use that Bloodright stratagem for a command point. You give each of your Flayed ones an additional attack, and then you use the Disruption Field stratagem for another command point. In the fight phase, a core unit will have a +1 to their strength characteristics, so they're going to all have strength 5. Then you use the Storm of Flensing Blades for 2 command points, which will give them the ability to fight again that phase. And furthermore, if you can get Amrak the Traveller in there, that's another attack each too. So these guys can be actually pumping out 200 attacks at strength 5, -2 AP with a rerollable charge. That's the absolute max potential there. That's if you're playing the Novak code. But 200 attacks is pretty much taking out anything. Especially with that My Will Be Done ability that's placed on them so they'll be hitting on 2s. Even if they went up against a toughness 7 vehicle, you're looking at about 40 damage approximately just coming from that single unit with that combination right there. That's incredible. That's going to be taking out virtually everything. Another very good melee option is the Scorbit Destroyers, another big winner for the core units that we've got. We mentioned them quite a bit in this video already, but the fact that they can be brought back so easily with the Technomancer and the Luminizares means a Plasma Sight should now be more of a consideration, as the risk isn't as great as it once was. So the same type of stratagems are also going to apply with the Destroyers here, but what you do with these guys, you get the Plasma Sight for the +1 to the strength, use the Disruption Field stratagem for another +1 strength, so now you've got your Reap Blades on strength 9, then you use the Command Protocol of Hungry Void, using Directive 2 for another +1 to the strength. Your Silent King may actually help with this one with the timing and whatnot, and you can actually use this protocol twice if needed. So now you've got strength 10 Reap Blades. Now if you wanted to do this slightly differently, you could use the augmentation from Luminizares, but there is a 1 in 3 shot with that because it is randomized with which augmentation you get on your unit. Then in terms of the actual attacks, the Plasma Sight of course gives you an additional attack per model. Then play Novak again using the Bloodright stratagem, you get an attack each there. And then likewise with Arak the Traveller, if you can position him correctly, because he's not as fast as your Scorbit Destroyers, that's another attack there. So you've got a buttload of attacks at strength 10, re-rolling ones naturally with their data sheet, and you can easily be giving them the Mine Will Be Done buffs to hit on 2s, and then again a re-rollable charge with the right Warlord trait. Or pop them out the flyer for a simple charge. I mean, the options are just unreal. At the start of 9th edition, the Scorbit Destroyers were probably our best melee unit, and they've pretty much reclaimed their spot within the codex. Now a lot of these combos are also going to work well with the Ophidian Destroyers. The strength stats are slightly lower, but they do get the Deep Strike if you wanted to use that. And the other fast melee new core unit for the balanced data sheet is the Triumph Praetorians. Now I never really used to use these guys, never even considered using these guys if I'm honest, and I'm not going to lie, I probably still won't. They're still a non-dynastic unit, so the core keyword doesn't affect them as much as other units. For example, the Mine Will Be Done requires them to be in a dynasty, the Implacable Conqueror Warlord trait requires them to be in a dynasty, and likewise the Veil of Darkness relic requires them to be in a dynasty. That's the 3 main rules to add to core units right now, but they still get benefits from the Disruption Field stratagem to make their Rods of Covenant strength 6 in melee, which is quite good against the current meta with toughness 3 models such as Drakari for example. Then we've got Canoptic Wraiths. They can use the Mine Will Be Done again, which is nice. Their Vicious Claws can go up to strength 7 with the same stratagem that we just mentioned. Now unfortunately Mine Will Be Done and the Technomancer's control node are not going to stack because there will be a cap on the hits roll, so the best they can be hitting on is a 3+. I'd probably use these to screen off the Silent King, that's the way I'd go. I now just consider them as quicker Lich Guard models, but they're going to have the actual buffs because of the core keyword now from the Silent King. Now we may as well talk about the Silent King while we're here, buffing core units for the hit rolls and the wound rolls, and the double Mine Will Be Done for multiple units. Now if you're playing the Zerakan Dynasty, there's a Dynastic Relic that's useful, which is the Sovereign Coronal, which gives core units both directives of a command protocol, and with this manipulation of protocols, this could be a really tactical way of playing. So flank in with your quick and melee core units. We've still got the Locust Destroyers to talk about. Geez, there's so many things to actually go through at the moment. So this is massive now. If you're playing a sit and shoot type of list, buffing the hit rolls again with the Mine Will Be Done ability, hitting on 2s, re-rolling 1s, because of their hardwired for destruction ability. So very rarely missing with those. And getting a Technomancer to bring a dead 60-point model back every single turn, maybe even twice. So these are now by far our best heavy support unit in my opinion. It even makes the standard Locust Destroyers an okay selection now. The main thing to take from this, which is the main synergies, which is the Mine Will Be Done ability, the Veil of Darkness relic, and the Implacable Conqueror. I think those 3 things are the key things here with these core units. If you can utilise those 3 in particular, that's going to massively strengthen your list. Now the last thing I wanted to discuss is one of the secondaries. Due to the fact we've got more core units on the table, so we've got more chances of scoring when you're taking the Ancient Machinery secondary objective, which I tend to take quite often anyway, but it isn't just going to be your Scarab Swarms and your Immortals perhaps that are scoring this now. You can pretty much do this with anyone. Maybe even your Reanimator may have some use after all. So guys, that's everything from the top of my head. Put down in the comments your combos. I'm sure there's loads more. I want to see all your maths, all the amount of attacks you get and all that jazz in the comments. The best comment will be shouted out on the next Necron video. In fact, it might be the one after that because the next one has already been filmed, which is a Know Your Foe video for Necrons against the Black Templars. So keep your eyes out for that one. I'm hoping that will come out by the end of the week. But as for this one today, make sure you drop a like on the video and subscribe if you're new. We're still trying to get to 5,000 subs before Christmas. We're on our way there, so kindly hit that subscribe button below. And the last thing to say is thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.